where government can write the contract and impose it on small businesses and workers without their input or consent. So some very concerning things for small business that now has bipartisan support in both the House and the Senate.
The Small Business Rundown is the official podcast of the National Federation of Independent Business, the member-driven voice of small business. NFIB and our members advocate to keep America's small businesses strong and independent in Washington, D.C., all 50 states, and the nation's courts.
Welcome to the Small Business Rundown, a biweekly podcast with information on independent businesses' victories and challenges in Washington, D.C. and state capitals. I'm Adam Temple, NFIB's Senior Vice President of Advocacy. Unionization has been a major topic of concern for both workers and businesses for years. Joining me today are NFIB's Vice President of State Government Relations, Tim Goodrich, and Principal of Federal Government Relations, Dylan Rosnick, to explore the latest events in unionization legislation, what unions mean for small businesses, and how you can get involved. Tim and Dylan, thank you both for helping me today pull back the curtain on this issue that affects small businesses at both the federal and the state level.
Sure, Adam. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for having me, Adam.
Dylan, I'll start with you. From a federal policy perspective, can you start by discussing current unionization legislation?
Absolutely. So the PRO Act has been around for a couple Congresses now. It is generally a partisan piece of legislation that NFIB has opposed very strongly and has been a key vote for us against this bill. Some things that are included are banning so-called captive audience meetings, legalizing secondary boycotts, and restricting the use of independent contractors. But one thing that we've been tracking very closely is a new thing is Senator Hawley's introduced this labor framework that includes a lot of what we've seen in the PRO Act, like banning so-called captive audience meetings, but new things like reviving the Clinton administration's ergonomics regulation and government takeover of labor contracts, where government can write the contract and impose it on small businesses and workers without their input or consent. So some very concerning things for small business that now has bipartisan support in both the House and the Senate.
And we'll get into the specifics of those things that you listed out, but what would be the impact on small businesses if either of these pieces of legislation were to pass?
I think a lot of it is intimidation of small business owners and forced unionization, quite frankly, on their workers and the business that can increase costs and red tape on small business owners. But more concerningly, the framework, government can impose a contract that could essentially shut down a business. They do not take into account the costs of running the business.
Right. And Tim, on the state level, what are you seeing as far as unionization and the legislation that is often proposed to back those?
Yeah, well, Adam, this is an ongoing fight every year at the state level.
Yeah.
I've been involved with government affairs for over 2 decades, and it never ends at the state level. Whereas Congress is slow moving, obviously the implications of Congress are much larger than what would happen at a state legislature.
Sure.
What happens in the states affects members immediately, and so we're always playing defense. One of the issues is right to work, which allows an employee to decide whether they want to be in a union or not. There are currently 27 states that have this law.
Right.
If you're not in a right-to-work state, you're in what's called a closed shop state. I happen to be originally from Michigan, which is a closed shop state. That means when I was in college, I had to join a union in order to perform a job for the summer for college. And then other issues, employer-sponsored events, more recently unemployment insurance for striking workers, paid leave, minimum wage, those types of things.
Yeah. Now we'll take a short break for an update on the 20% small business tax deduction.
NFIB is America's leading small business organization, fighting for small business owners across the nation. Because of a victory made possible by NFIB members and lawmakers who supported making the 20% small business deduction permanent, more than 33 million small businesses will avoid a massive tax hike this year. We thank the administration, Congress, and small business advocates for making the small business deduction permanent to protect small businesses from a massive tax increase. To learn more, go to smallbusinessdeduction.com.
And welcome back. Tim, as we discuss union legislation, the issue of so-called captive audience, both of you mentioned that. these laws come into play. Will you explain what the proposals entail in regard to union discussions and the workplace and employers and their ability to communicate with their employees?
Sure. These laws are intended to prevent an employer from having a conversation with their employee about the pros and cons of a union in the workplace. Under these laws, in fact, an employer is not only prohibited from talking to their employee about these issues, but they also can face penalties as well. So it creates a large barrier for the employer.
Dylan, can you discuss some of the proposals on Capitol Hill as they relate to the issue on the so-called captive audience?
Absolutely. So the PRO Act, like I mentioned before, has been around for a couple Congresses. That has been generally a partisan bill led by Democrats in both the House and the Senate. And it had a couple House Republicans that have supported it and would ban these sorts of meetings. But more concerningly, a Senate Republican has proposed this ban of these meetings, and more Senate Republicans have been generally warmer to the proposal, given that a Republican is now leading it. And so there is bipartisan support for some of these provisions, including banning employer-sponsored meetings like so-called captive audience.
Tim, what's the big deal? Why is this important? Why does it matter whether small business owners can talk to their employees about these kinds of issues?
Well, first and foremost, it's a violation of their constitutional right to free speech.
Okay.
You're putting a gag on employers. So a union rep comes into a workplace and starts to, we'll say, stir up workers, starts to talk about the employer, starts to say, hey, maybe you're not getting paid enough, maybe your benefits aren't great. If you join this union, we'll make sure that you get raises, that you get better benefits, that you name it.
Yeah.
Under these laws, the employer doesn't get an opportunity to make their case that, hey, we've given you raises, we've expanded the business. This is where we want to move with the business. This is the opportunities you have. All that is prohibited by these types of laws.
And how many states have proposals like this in place?
By recent count, 13 states.
Okay.
Most recently, Rhode Island just joined as the 13th.
Are more on the way?
There are some that are considering it, Massachusetts, Michigan, Pennsylvania, some other states as well.
Okay. Tim, it may come as a surprise that there's a debate about whether or not to provide unemployment benefits to workers that are in the process of striking, that are actively striking. But this is a debate that we're seeing increasingly. Can you explain more of what you've seen in the states on this specifically?
Yeah, I mean, it's really kind of silly that we're even having this discussion. But Big Labor has decided that they want their members to be able to go on strike and collect unemployment while striking. Now, that might not sound that bad, but let's take a look at it for a second. Most unions have a fund that union members pay into, so while they're on strike, they're not having to go it alone, the employee. So the employee is provided some funding. So what the unions really are doing here is saying, we don't want to take more money out of our members' pockets, so we're going to take it out of the pocket of the employer. We're going to have our folks strike a business and collect unemployment, thus creating an incentive to strike.
Right. And I think that a lot of small business owners would know this, but you said that it's taking the money out of the pockets of small business owners. How is it providing government unemployment to striking workers? How is that taking the money from the small business owner?
Sure. So employers pay into the unemployment insurance fund. There's also state and federal money that goes into it, but the employers pay into these programs. And so everybody that's paying into this program, every employer, is having to fund that strike. So it could be I'm just an independent contractor working on a computer, but I have to provide this for my employees because we're a 3 or 4 person operation. I'm paying into the unemployment fund, and I'm supporting that strike.
Right. Dylan, is there movement on the issue in Congress on a federal level?
Yes, actually, there's a bill that has been recently introduced by Representative Yakum from Indiana. It's called the SHIELD Act. It would prevent striking workers from being able to receive unemployment insurance and undo a lot of what we've seen from that Tim was explaining from the states, is allowing striking workers to collect this from this fund that is funded by employers. And like he mentioned, it's concerning that it's an incentive for workers to walk off the job for more pay or more benefits or whatever the union is promising them that they can get. And the employer is the one that is facing all of the consequence of lack of productivity, increased costs, and having to comply with some of these demands because the government and the employer is bailing out the worker that is walking away.
If I could just add to that, we were happy that 2 sessions in a row, the Connecticut governor, who's a Democrat, pro-labor generally, vetoed striking workers getting unemployment. And in his veto message, he indicated that if this were to occur, were to become law, in essence, the state of Connecticut is siding with the striking workers, and that he saw as unfair. So we were very happy to see that 2 sessions in a row.
So an issue that's bipartisan on the other side as well. Well, thank you both. We've covered a lot here today on unionization and the legislation around it. For both of you, if a small business owner is interested in getting involved, where do you recommend they start? Tim, I'll start with you.
So first and foremost, if you aren't already a member of NFIB, you should become one. After that, I would recommend talking to your NFIB state director. Each of the 50 states has a state director. This individual is an advocate for the members in that state and will know what legislation and regulations are being considered, which ones might possibly be passed, and they're a great resource for a member to find out. Also, share your story with your NFIB state director. It might be testimony at the state capitol. Oftentimes we find our member stories are more important than the state director lobbying. So those are places I would start. And during election time, ask for a yes or no. Recent example, a candidate here in Virginia that has recently stated that she will not sign a law to eliminate right to work.
Right.
But what she didn't say was it can become law without her signature should she become governor. So it's important for a member to get that strong yes or no. Are you for right to work or are you against it? Yes or no?
Gotcha. Dylan?
Yeah, I think like Tim said, is share your story. Reach out to, if you're an NFIB member, reach out to your local grassroots manager, share your story, become more active on issues that matter to you, but also write your lawmaker. NFIB does action alerts or calls to action that are very useful to share your story with your lawmaker and let them know real small business owners have stories and have feelings about these policies that are proposed. And sometimes the story, like Tim said, is really elevating and highlighting some real small business owners for lawmakers in Washington provides the strength against some of these bad ideas.
Before we go, anything else either of you would like to add?
I would say if you're in a labor-friendly state and you're seeing challenges to your business, either through regulation or proposed legislation, get involved with your state director, get involved with other members, and get active. If you're in a employer-friendly state, I would say don't sit on your laurels because we hear every day about people moving from labor-friendly states to employer-friendly states. And what you hear people say is, don't bring your voting pattern with you. We don't want that. But, people need to be educated. And so if somebody's coming from a labor-friendly state into your state, I would say when you hire them, get together, educate them, tell them why right to work and some of these other pro-business laws in your state are important and how it has benefited and helped your state grow economically.
Yeah, I think it's stay vigilant, stay educated. There's a lot going on at both the state and federal level, especially in the labor space. Especially more recently, there's been a little bit of a shift where pro-union policies has been a true bipartisan issue and a real threat to small businesses nationwide. And so I think stay educated, stay active, help us share your story with lawmakers is always going to be super helpful and really impactful.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
As Dylan mentioned earlier, you can take action and get involved in this issue at the link in the show notes. For more resources and information on unionization legislation, visit our website at nfib.com, where you can find articles, state-specific insights, and critical analysis. If there's anything you'd like us to cover on the podcast in the future, please email podcast@nfib.org. Now I want to thank you, the listeners, for joining us on today's Small Business Rundown. We'll be back every 2 weeks bringing you news and analysis from Washington, D.C. and state capitals so that you, whether you're a small business owner or a supporter of one, can continue to blaze a trail.
The Small Business Rundown is brought to you by NFIB, the voice of small business. You can find us at nfib.com and on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn.